Welcome back, my friend. We're talking about gay marriage and religious liberty, and my special guest is attorney Alan Reinach, who is the executive director of the Church-State Council right here in Southern California. Alan, it's great to have you with us.
It's great to be with you, John.
Always great to have a New Yorker.
Well, happy to do it.
Who's got contacts in Wall Street.
Not too many anymore, but that's where my family history is.
What's so bad with gay marriage, some people would ask. Now, you know, today in the United States of America, in Australia, other places, political correctness is so prevalent that you're not allowed to have an opinion anymore. You know, if you want to be politically correct, you've got to believe that everything, everybody is okay. What's so bad about gay marriage?
I wish we had more than half an hour. You know, same-sex marriage poses the most severe threat to the survival of the institutions of the church that we have ever faced.
And maybe the institutions of the state.
Well, to the survival of our civilization and our society, perhaps.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we've already had religious institutions close because they refuse to go along with the new orthodoxy of non-discrimination against people of the, same sex, of homosexuality.
Let's make it very plain. We believe the Bible teaches that we should love everybody. We believe this.
Absolutely.
We believe in the golden rule that Jesus gave us. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
At the Church-State Council, we walk a very fine line in terms of upholding the rights of believers to live according to their own biblical faith, while also respecting the rights of gay people to live according to their own values without suffering discrimination. So there's a live and let live.
So you don't believe in discriminating against gays?
Absolutely not. But at the same time, we want we want the same respect for our own beliefs and values, and for the church, that we ought to have the right to live according to our beliefs. And I don't know if you're aware, John, the U.S. Supreme Court held earlier this year that a student group that was Christian was guilty of discrimination simply for requiring its members to be Christian. It is now regarded as discriminatory to be Christian. Perhaps an even more outrageous decision came out of a U.S. Court of Appeals, a federal court of appeals in D.C., in our nation's capital. The good citizens of D.C. were wanting to put to a vote of the people whether marriage should be a man and a woman, because the city council had voted in gay marriage in the fall of 2009. So they wanted a ballot initiative to put this before the people. Shall we return to marriage being a man and a woman, or leave the city council's action the way it is? The city council refused to let that go on the ballot. They said that to vote on marriage would violate the human rights charter of the city. And a federal appeals court agreed that simply voting on marriage was so discriminatory that the people aren't even allowed to do it. Marriage is discrimination. Did you know that, John?
No, I never knew that, but there's a lot of things I don't know, but I'm learning some things here today. Tell me this. You're a Christian with a Jewish background.
Yes, indeed.
Why is marriage, Orthodox marriage between a man and a woman, the best way for the church and the world? Why do you believe that, personally, as a Christian?
Well, let's start with what the Bible says.
You believe the Bible?
Before sin, the first chapter of Genesis, God established two institutions, Sabbath and marriage.
Yes.
And both of them constitute the foundation of, first, Sabbath is the foundation of the spiritual community. It's the time for the spiritual community to come together, to worship as a body, to encourage one another. And then you have marriage is the foundation of society, of civilization.
Before you go any further, you're on a roll, but I'm just going to try to get in something here. Karl Barth, you know, the great theologian.
Sure.
He quotes some obscure theologian in one of his books. And Karl Barth made this statement, quoting this man, "When the day of God when the holy day becomes the day of man, society and humanity wither away and the demons rule. So if you get rid of the Sabbath, society breaks down. May I suggest to you today, along your line of thinking, that when you get rid of marriage, one man and one woman, society will also break down.
It will break down it is the foundation of society. And, what's remarkable, we had these various legal challenges here in California to our own constitutional amendment to preserve marriage as a man and woman, known as Proposition 8. And Judge Walker issued a very lengthy decision earlier this year and made what I think most Americans would find to be extraordinary conclusions that he claims are factual conclusions, such as children do not need to be raised by a male parent and a female parent
How would he know?
To be well adjusted.
How would he know?
Well, he purports to take this from the record in the case, but in fact, this is really more
a tremendous bias.
Bias. Yeah. He says the genetic relationship between a parent and a child is not related to a child's adjustment outcomes.
I say again, how would he know?
Well, the American Academy of Pediatricians is opposing this decision, seeking reversal on appeal, and particularly contending that children don't need or benefited from being raised by their own heterosexual parents. Pediatricians know what children need, and they need a father and a mother. We don't have to rely on the Bible to tell us what biology ought to, be obvious to everybody. Kids need a father and a mother, and if they don't have it, they suffer, and society suffers.
Did you know? In Africa, they've made an amazing discovery. It's a great country. They've discovered that young bull elephants become rogues when the old bull elephants are killed. An amazing thing they've discovered, that the young elephants that go around marauding and killing people and breaking into settlements, they've done this because they haven't had an old bull elephant to take care of them and show them what they ought to do.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, they've discovered this in Africa, that you've got to have a mama elephant and you've got to have a papa elephant, or else you're going to have misfits.
Look, the real issue here that most Americans, I think, John, who are, at least modestly supportive of gay marriage, the attitude is live and let live. If gays want to get married, it's no skin off my back.
Sure.
I don't see how it's going to hurt.
That's the attitude.
It's not going to hurt me. And we don't understand the implications. We don't understand marriage historically is a child-centered institution. It's all about the preservation of society by providing a healthy, nurturing environment for child rearing. And that's not to say that every marriage is going to produce offspring, or that there's something wrong with people who have lost a spouse or been divorced
but
getting
it's the
married.
Norm, isn't it?
But this is the purpose of marriage, is to provide a healthy environment for raising kids. What the gay marriage movement is really doing is changing that so that marriage is now simply a matter of personal gratification. And once the model becomes, well, the state has to permit whatever somebody wants to do, well, then the state has no right to tell a bisexual that they can't marry a man and a woman at the same time, because that's what will gratify them.
They'll do this sooner or later.
Oh, I suspect sooner. But the point is that it really destroys the moral foundation of society and of the family. And look, if we learned anything from the history of the downfall of the Roman Empire, it was the moral degradation that made the empire and the civilization weak and overrun by the barbarians.
Rome collapsed inwardly.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it was bred in circuses. Well, we've got the circuses, we've got increasing socialism, we've got an entertainment culture that's all about me, me, me.
Yes, of
and
course.
Sexuality run amok in our culture. It's sapping the life out of our civilization. And our civilization will come under judgment.
The American society became great because it was based basically upon the Scriptures. I'm not talking about a theocracy.
No.
But what I'm talking about is that the pioneers of this country, most of them seem to have a healthy respect for God.
Absolutely.
And a healthy respect for the Ten Commandments.
Well, we understood anyway that the moral foundation of our laws was based on the law of God.
Yes. And this has been traditional with great nations for thousands of years. And so you're telling me today that the Roman Empire went downhill because of moral decadence. And this has invaded America, and everybody has the right to express his viewpoint, except the viewpoint that we believe that God has given us certain moral truths. And as Christians, we have the right to defend those moral truths and the right to defend traditional marriage.
I do a lecture I entitled...
You believe that, don't you?
Yes, John.
We have the right to defend that.
What you need to understand is, legally today, at least here in California, increasingly influencing in other states, homosexuality has been equated with race. And so
Yes, I know.
if you discriminate on the basis of, if you discriminate against gays, which Christian belief is considered discriminatory. If you are a Christian institution and you want to employ people of your own faith to represent your values to the world, and if you discipline or refuse to hire a gay person because they don't reflect your faith, you're discriminatory. And you can be shut down.
You can be shut down?
Well, in Boston and San Francisco, the Roman Catholic Church was forced to close their adoption agencies because the city ordinances requiring non-discrimination said they had to serve gay couples that sought adoption. And morally, the Catholic Church decided they could not go along with that. And so they had a choice, either shut down or
compromise their principles.
Or compromise their principles.
Did they appeal to the courts?
No, neither one of these cases went to court. They simply closed down their adoption services. In Boston, the Catholic Charities was doing 75% of the adoptions. I mean, who's hurt? The kids are the ones who are hurt. And mind you, if the state policy is to permit gays to adopt, which it has every right to make that policy, then the state can fund agencies that will provide those adoption services. They don't have to twist the arm of the church to do their business for them in violation of their own conscience. It's not an either-or. We can have religious liberty and still respect the rights of gay people.
We should say to the audience watching, we believe in loving gays. We believe they're children of God, and we believe in respecting them, and we do not believe in discrimination.
Right.
But what we are saying is this: we believe that we've got certain rights also. And
the traditional religious beliefs of Islam, of Judaism, of Christianity are all that marriage, that human sexuality is expressed within the context of marriage.
Yes.
But this view is now regarded by the federal courts and the California courts as discriminatory.
Tell me that again, because that's, we believe that we live in a land of freedom, and you're telling me now that the courts are going to respect the rights of everybody except those who believe the Bible in America.
Increasingly, equality and inclusiveness means equality and inclusiveness for everybody but traditional religious beliefs and those who hold to them, whether Jewish, Christian, or Islamic. So, for example, John...
Give me some examples.
Let's say you were teaching at one of our great Christian institutions at Pacific Union College, Seventh-day Adventist College.
Yes.
And now, to be clear, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but supposing that you were terminated because you were found guilty of the garden variety of sexual misconduct, adultery with a woman, and so you were terminated. You would not have any legal claim to bring against the college for discrimination. The college has a right to hold its faculty to its Christian standards regarding sexual marriage and sexual activity. But on the other hand, if you were terminated because your misconduct was not with a woman but with another man, the way that the laws are going, under the rationale of what the courts are saying, you would be able to sue and get your job back. And if the school didn't change its policies and practices, it could be put out of business because you would be more equal as a homosexual than as a heterosexual.
So everybody's got the right to his opinion, except those who've got an opinion that's based on the Bible. This is gross bigotry then, isn't it?
It is gross bigotry.
It's bigotry on behalf of the minority.
And understand that even the United States Supreme Court held that this Christian student club, Christian Legal Society Club, was properly excluded as a student club by the state, the law schools, non-discrimination policy. It was in violation of the policy, and therefore the school was right not to recognize it.
How do you feel about this?
This is the most serious religious liberty issue that we have faced, because it really threatens...
Not the mosque in New York.
That's an emotional issue. This is where the rubber meets the road. Do you want to have a Christian school to send your children to? A Christian university? What about childcare? What about, senior citizens' homes? What about charities that the Christian churches operate? If you want to have Christian organizations in society, they're being threatened right now. What about Christians in the professions, psychologists, social workers? Do you know there are 2 cases pending in the courts right now, John, where students, graduate students, were kicked out of their program because they would not accept the orthodox view in the school that homosexuality is moral.
So they were kicked out?
They were kicked out.
And that's not discrimination, is it?
Well, I think it is.
Of course it is.
And they're suing. In one case, someone in a counseling program was specifically assigned to counsel a gay couple. And when they refused to do it, they were kicked out.
One of the things that personally amazes me is the intolerance on the campuses of many American universities. You can talk about anything except the things that are politically incorrect. And this topic is politically incorrect.
That's true. There have been battles over speech codes.
Everybody has got the right, but no, you better not talk about this, and you better not talk about Christian values, because that's taboo.
It's amazing that the values of inclusiveness and equality seem to exclude religious values.
Yeah.
And so I have a lecture entitled "Wake Up and Smell the Equality," because equality, isn't what it's all cut out to be.
Tell me how Christian institutions, tell me more about this.
All right.
How Christian institutions, colleges are being adversely impacted by these policies.
Let me first explain it this way, John. Supposing that you were a white supremacist group and you wanted to run an elementary school and hire only whites and admit only white students. You couldn't do that. Sooner or later...
That's against the law.
Well, if you pulled the wool over the eyes of the taxing authorities and managed to get your tax-exempt status and to start operations, sooner or later somebody would catch on to what you're doing and a lawsuit would come up and you'd be sued for discriminating.
Yeah.
And you'd have to stop discriminating as part of the resolution of that lawsuit, or else you'd be shut down. You can't exist.
You've got to open the doors to every person,
right.
In other words.
Okay. If you understand that increasingly, California is very clear, homosexuality is the same legal status as race. It's not going to stay only in California.
Well,
so the implication is, if you can operate a racist school, then you can operate a school based on biblical teachings about marriage and human sexuality, and deal with homosexual conduct as a discipline issue. But if it's illegal discrimination, then you can't. And that was the point I made in my little hypothetical about you as a faculty member at a college. It will be illegal for a college or a church or any other Christian organization to uphold its biblical standards of human sexuality.
Here we are at the Carter Report. We are a conservative Christian organization. We take the Bible as the Word of God. We would be forced to employ people who have a different core value to us. We would be forced to employ, say, people who openly practice homosexuality.
It might never happen. You might never have an employee.
But it could happen.
It certainly could.
And it is happening, is it?
Supposing you had a job opening for a secretary.
Yeah.
And it turns out that, someone who applies says, I really like what you're doing, but, would you hire me? Because I'm a lesbian. If you didn't hire them, and it could be that you didn't hire them because they weren't the most qualified person for the job.
Maybe they couldn't use a computer.
Maybe you just had a better candidate. But if they thought that it was because you knew that she was a lesbian, she would sue. And you'd have exposure there. And at a minimum, the court's going to require you to change your policies and your practices to make it clear that you don't discriminate.
So here in America, where we believe in religious freedom, the courts now and the government, they have the right to come to us and they say, you've got to violate your religious beliefs to conform to our state law.
That's correct. One caveat. Understand that we haven't completely fallen off the cliff yet. The laws have not uniformly around the country gotten to the point where we've completely lost our religious freedom. The principles that the courts are starting to apply will lead there. But we're not there yet. We've seen some institutions close. We've seen cases where tax-exempt status of religious organizations is challenged.
Give me some institutions.
Well, I mentioned the two adoption agencies, the Catholic adoption
Catholic
ones. But we have a very important case that we're all watching closely in New Jersey. Methodist camp meeting property on the Jersey Shore. Beautiful place, Ocean Grove. A great spot for weddings. Same-sex couple wanted to have a civil union, a commitment ceremony. And the camp meeting decided they could not condone that. They didn't want that on their property. Initially...
That's their right, isn't it?
It ought to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen.
But initially they lost a portion of their real property tax exemption. They were fined by the State Human Rights Commission, and these things are pending in court. They're defending their right as a religious property owner to say, no, we don't want to have a same-sex couple solemnizing their relationship on our property.
Now, you're an attorney. You're into religious liberty issues. Where do you see it going?
We have this culture war raging, John. The pendulum right now is swinging towards the secular side in favor of gay marriage, in favor of the gays.
The very character of America is changing.
And the very American civilization is at risk. Now, I don't know if the pendulum's going to keep going. If it does, the churches can expect to lose their rights and freedom.
Who can stop the swing of the pendulum?
Well, the problem is that Satan loves to play both sides. And so the right has a tendency to become that much more intolerant. And what happens when it's a battle between, say, the Christians and the gays, the gospel is the ultimate victim.
Yes, of
is
course.
The loser.
Of course.
Because the Christians completely lose the ability to show the love of Christ to the gay community because they're too busy fighting it.
Christians must love the gays.
Jesus didn't say, I just died for the righteous for the Protestants or for the Lutherans or for the Adventists. Jesus died to save the world.
Absolutely.
And last I looked, gays are part of this world.
Absolutely.
They're people that Jesus died for. And so our first obligation is not to protect our own freedoms as much as we want to do that. It is to preach the gospel to everyone. And not to exclude anyone from the love of Christ.
And get away from the attitude of being bigoted.
Right.
We don't want to be bigoted.
But, you know, it's a very, very serious risk
that
our liberties will be lost.
What should we do? The people who are watching the television program, what should you do?
That's a good question. You know, we have a religious liberty organization called the North American Religious Liberty Association. Our website is religiousliberty.info. We have to be informed and get involved. We've got to stand up for our freedoms and be responsible with the rights of citizenship. Otherwise, we have no business complaining about the loss of our freedoms. If we're not going to stand up when there are opportunities to get involved, to support those who are working on these issues. We first of all, we need to educate ourselves. And then there are opportunities to do things.
I think we need two things. We need the love of God in our hearts, so we're going to love every person. We've got to love our enemies as ourselves. Only the grace of God, Ellen, can make you like that and make me like that. But we've got to stand for the truth.
We do.
We had a little lady who used to preach in our church, and she said, you've got to stand for the truth so the heavens fall. And so we've got to be loving, but we've got to stand up for what we believe in. And that's what we're asking you to do today, dear friend. Stand up for Jesus. Have the love of God in your heart, but stand for the truth of God, even though the heavens fall. And it's been a privilege, Alan, having you with us today. May God bless you in your work. And may God bless you too, friend. Please write to me, John Carter, Post Office Box 1900, Thousand Oaks, California, 91358. In Australia, write to me at Terrigal. May God richly bless you. Till next time, goodbye for now.